Good morning, and today we're on to, I think, day 24. We're on fine motor skills and control of tools. And I don't want to go madly and excessively about penmanship. I want to think about fine motor skills. So let us go through and have a think about them. So before you can control fine motor skills, you need good postural control. You need bilateral integration because you've got to get across your midline without any overflow or any strange movements to disrupt your working with your fine motor skills. You need to be able to see what you're doing, so your focal range needs to be comfortable in the near range. You're not doing something strange, you're not changing eyes to try and stop it flickering. And you've got to bear in mind it's a lot easier when you have a good sense of a dominant hand. And that doesn't come in till 6, and the rest isn't coming in till 7, 8. So realistically, fine motor skill control is something we're going to be mastering from 7, 8. We're going to do lots of pre-development, but we're not going very far before then. So preparation is really important. And I would suggest to you that you avoid pens and pencils. Really, I am serious. I think what we're doing to children is aversion therapy. We're making them sit there at 4. They haven't got postural control. They haven't got bilateral integration. They can't see properly. We're damaging them. The children here are from a Croydon school. It took me 2 seconds to find them. This is Park Hill. And the reception children are having to sit there and write quite small font with adult tools. They're not coping, they're not ready. And by the time we're getting to year 1, year 2, we have got learners who are working with one eye, probably damaged for life. Our objective is to control tools, to master that control, to make patterns so that we can do advanced level maths, to make new things so we can create and generate wealth, and repair old things so we don't waste money. Writing is quite a minor thing you do with your fingers. It shouldn't be the only thing we're focusing in on. So physiology, really important. Like the feet, there's a lot of bones in here, a lot of ligaments, they're complex. And you can look up online and they tell you it all. What's really exciting is that our opposing thumb. Really exciting. We can do things that no one else can do, no other primate. So the opposable thumb in humans, absolutely crucial feature of fine motor skills. We need to learn to use it. It explains why we can do precise and fine movements, and it enables us to do much more complex things. I would suggest to you there is a two-way process going on. The more complex things we can do with our fingers, the more complex things we can do with our brains. Our fingers need to do complex things, our brains need to understand it. In order for our brains to understand the complexity of what we're doing with our fingers, we need our body to work together, left and right, we need the vision working, we need the sound working, and then we can do absolutely amazing things. For goodness sake, we can fly to the moon. For goodness sake, we can make computers. For goodness sake, I can sit here and talk to you. That was just not possible in my childhood. But we need the fingers working, and the fingers determine a lot of the very higher level intelligence. So let's get the hands working really well. So the first thing we do is get some strength in the hands. And we also want to think about, you want that division in the hand, where the hand can be doing 2 things at once. So when a child is crawling and holding something, they tend to be in that position. They're crawling on that part of the hand, they're holding with that. Practicing that position is your fundamental of getting this hand to be doing things precisely. So you can play a really stupid crawling relay game, always up for games, and the children are crawling up and down the school hall, picking things up, putting them down, and you are encouraging them to be crawling on one half of the hand, holding with the other. It's good motor skills, it's good preparation to get that division in the hand. You can strengthen your hand. I intend to have some more exciting by doing things like taking pieces of paper, and they've got to hold them in the air and screw up the piece of paper, and then a good next thing to do is throw it in a bin. Throw it across the midline in a bin. You can make it quite a multidisciplinary activity, but you need to get that strength. You need to get the child to be able to really think, my hand is working separately, I can see it, I can control it. It's not happening here, it's happening here. And I'm really getting my hand, eye, brain, I'm getting my fine motor skills working. All important pre-writing skills. Obviously, your Play-Doh and things, really working, and you want something with a lot of resistance. So the older and nastier and harder your Play-Doh, the better. Things like making bread, making pizzas, all of that pressing and rubbing. And as I've mentioned before, the joy is that when it goes in the oven, it's sterilised. And you know, simple things, making pastry and so on, all good hand movements, and the children will happily eat whatever they produced. And of course, the usual squeezing balls. Personally, I find them a bit boring. I think children like something they can do something with at the end, always got some excitement in it, because you've got to keep getting those hands working. This is a generation who've been lying on their sofa, looking at a tablet. Some quite important technical skills. Task number 1, chopstick racing. See if I can do this. You are literally learning to work with your hand, going up and down a chopstick. You can do it with pencils, but chopsticks are fantastic. They're very cheap. You can buy about 10, 20 sets for a couple of pounds. And you are getting the child to hold their hands like that, and you're playing stupid games where again they are just looking at it and they're showing how cunning they can be at manipulating a single chopstick. And it's obviously really good pre-writing control. And they like doing it. It's daft. It's not, you're not pressurizing them to do anything else. It's a single skill. We're not integrating very much. We are just getting our eyes and fingers working together. And we need to spend time getting our eyes and fingers working together. We also need to get our fingers to be able to roll like that. It's quite a useful skill, particularly when we get to play with compasses and make patterns. And just practicing really good manipulation of those skills. Doesn't need to be for more than 30 seconds, a minute a day. It's a daft activity, but you just keep doing it. And once people have developed particularly stunning skills, and I'm sure the children will think better than I can, you reward them for it. The other thing you do is putting a coin in the hand, which strangely is about the only thing I haven't got, but anything in the hand. And you say to the child, right, you've got a Lego brick in your hand, but coin's more challenging. You've got to wriggle your fingers and wriggle your fingers until you can hold it between finger and thumb. But you can't use the other hand. You've just got to wriggle to get it between forefinger and thumb. Same thing on the other hand, getting them to the point where they can hold it between forefinger and thumb. Yeah. All of that wriggling and manipulation, the brain, understanding how the hand works is important. Using plasticine, and you give them a squash bit of plasticine and tell them they've got to manipulate it. They can use 3 fingers if they like, or 2, but they've got to make it into a cube. They can't use the table. That really, it makes the brain work with the fingers. It makes the brain have a really good think about what to do with that little cube of plasticine. It's good. It's pre-foundation skills to get hand, eye, brain, hand manipulation, strength going. And then using simple tools. There are all sorts of threading games. It's important. You're learning to thread, you're learning accuracy, you're learning how to use your fine motor skills. It needs to happen. Obviously, doing cutting activities, and away you go. Things like building, modelling and painting. all really important. You're just learning to manipulate things with your hands. Doesn't really matter what it is. So all of that cardboard technology, really important. The fact that it's basically cornflake boxes doesn't matter. The child is using their imagination, the child is using their fine motor skills to create something. I really like these maths manipulatives. I like any maths manipulatives. I like these particularly. I think these should be used in schools extensively, and that for a long time children ought to be able to make patterns with them and copy patterns, make patterns and then extend the pattern. That, I think, is not only a good use of fine motor skills, but is really, really essential maths preparation to see and understand pattern. They have got to see and understand pattern for A-level maths. It needs to start in reception, and this manipulation, copying and mirroring and doing all sorts of things with pattern needs to happen day after day. So that is incredibly good use of time. And obviously other maths manipulatives, making up blocks of 3. So the child really understands what 3 looks like. Maybe the child enjoys making different coloured blocks of 3 or blocks of 4, getting things up to 10, understanding what makes 10. Very, very physical, but all the time they're using their fine motor skills. They are really important because it is through the hand, through manipulation, we are really going to understand letter and number. I would suggest also that one of the things that particularly the Japanese do very well is when they start writing, they don't start on tiny bits of paper. They are using enormous sheets of newspaper and they are writing really well. But what they're also doing, they are taking time in big shapes that the children can very easily see to make the shape of characters. They are also doing a lot of midline crossing work. So writing large is really good. And then coming down to small as the child's vision comes in. Plenty of things we could be doing to get literacy foundations in place, using the child's actual physiology rather than pushing them to something that's painful. There are specific tasks that increase the complexity. So one of the things I really like is origami. I would suggest to you that if a child cannot fold a piece of paper in 2 accurately, they haven't got the skills to write. They can't see. You need to be able to bring left and right together. You need to be able to see what matches accurately. You need to be able to coordinate. If that bilateral coordination isn't there, there is no way on this planet they are ready to write. So those sorts of things, like making aeroplanes, like making water bombs, terribly exciting. Children are desperate to do it because there's nothing so exciting in summer as water bombs. They will practice over and over again folding pieces of paper, and what they're learning is that fine motor skill coordination. It's a lot of midline crossing, it's a lot of understanding symmetry. It's a huge amount of pre-maths in here. Likewise, big jigsaw puzzles. Just learning to place them and manipulate them. See a picture as a whole. You're using your fine motor skills, you're manipulating. It doesn't need to be tiny pieces, it needs to be big. Trust me, a lot of my adults struggle with 12-piece jigsaw puzzles. We've got to get this sense of puzzles and how things work as a whole sorted. So there's a lot of puzzles you can use. My favourite puzzle on the planet is Tricky Fingers. I don't recommend driving with it because you hear it all the time as you're driving, in fact everywhere you go. But what you're going to do is you're going to train the children to copy patterns, and they've really got to manipulate using their fine motor skills. They hold with one hand and they manipulate with their forefinger. They can't do it upside down, they've got to learn to see a pattern, copy a pattern. It's very, very good fine motor skills. And they need to be practicing those sorts of things. It's very frustrating, but it's exceptionally good for that tablet generation who haven't got really good links eye to brain. Jenga, another one where I go, can't do Jenga, I can't write. Jenga is a really sensible thing. You're asking somebody to make a judgment, to remove something. It's very exciting, it's high risk, but obviously you've got to have your fine motor skills. You've got to make a judgment. You've got to be able to perceive depth. You wouldn't do Jenga with many small children, you know, it's far too risky. Those are the skills you need to write efficiently. So actually look how they're doing these sort of puzzles, see how they're operating and think, they're not really ready to start something as complex as writing. Sewing, another, big stitches, not those, cross stitch, all the sorts of things we were doing when we were little. Certainly back in the 1960s, we did a heck of a lot of sewing and knitting. I can certainly remember at infant school us knitting squares and sewing them together to make huge blankets. It's a good thing to do. Just simple knitting, normal standard stitch. Weaving, again, good midline crossing, good eye control, all really nice. Back in the day, we all made raffia mats and our mothers all had something to put the teapot on. Again, a very good piece of fine motor skills control. Use of tools, hammers, screwdrivers to make things. There are plenty of safe tools they can use, and they're delighted when they make something. Things like drumming. I'm very privileged to live in Croydon, have a very diverse community. One of the sets of very skilled people we have are Indian drummers. They, when they are training the youngsters, do a huge amount of work with very precise fine motor skills control before they touch a drum and very precise sound production. So da 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 da. I cannot do it, but they are amazingly good at it. But they know it takes years to get all these skills in place, and it's worth investing the time. So this is years, by this stage you are probably 7, 6, 7. You want to start getting the children using chopsticks properly. Chopsticks properly rest between the V of your thumb and your finger, and they're jammed there. And then the other one is the one that moves. And you're going to move one chopstick and the other one stays still. There are good online guides on YouTube, and you're going to pick something up and put it away. And the advantage is you can be picking things up and putting them away very widely. That is really good for getting your fine motor skills linked with very wide visual control. And the wider you make the child arch across their midline with daft activities, the better their visual control, the better their perception of what's going on around them. All good stuff. So controlling chopsticks is really good, and it, of course, emphasizes that division in the hand. It gets the hand some very good controls for pre-reading. It's even better if reading with raisins, because the children like it. They get to eat the thing afterwards. Painting and drawing, obviously, they're enjoying making something in the size, the scale that they can deal with. Musical instruments, you might want to start bringing in. Again, they like keyboard, they're fascinated by it. They like recorders and whistles. They like to make different sounds. It's very exciting. And it's, of course, part of integrating your sound, your vision, your motor skills. All really nice stuff. You can make your origami more complex. You get to the crane and you're away. You can make models, start making robotics. So Lego logo and things. With starting with more complex things. I really like people to get to the stage where they can use a pair of compasses. Throw everything on the floor. But I start with a pair of compasses and I am just getting people rotating the compasses. We haven't even put it on the paper. I like compasses that lock. I don't like cheap compasses because they don't work. And once we get onto the piece of paper, we are going to just put down the spike, and we're not going to put the pencil down to begin with, just going to rotate until we can quite happily rotate the pair of compasses in a circle. Then we're going to take it down and make a circle. And we're going to practice making circles. And children are quite happy. But when we're doing that, our spine is straight, our posture is good, we're not leaning on the desk. We are upright. And we are literally controlling the tools with our fine motor skills. Not a lot else is moving. And that's the level of control you want to get to, really, before you are rushing to spend hours writing. Because once you can control your fine motor skills and you can start doing things, you're holding a pencil, and we're saying to children, I want you to write a story. They're 4 or 5, and we're saying, write a story. What I did at the weekend. It's impossible, because to do that, you've got to be able to think, visualize, and integrate sound, vision. You've got to have postural control. You've got to go across your midline to write. That is not a skill anyone has in place until 8. So all of this practicing writing sentences about what we did at the weekend is tortuous if we don't give them time to develop all the skills so they can come together. And they come together very quickly in countries where they delay formal education until 7. You can't beat Mother Nature, go with it, support it, please. So, last request, please think. All that correct postural control, all that correct control of fine motor skills, so we're not moving our shoulders, we're sitting upright, we're able to write, we're able to move our fine motor skills without great other movements or any overflow. It is something we have complete control over. We need to spend time in the schools mastering that. We need not to rush people to it and cause them long-term damage. This is someone's body, they've got to use it for life for 80 years. We've got to spend time investing in it. And that's what should be happening in the years from 4 to 8, please. So thank you for listening. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, and goodbye.